Atau ini dinyalain? Oh. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi sahbihi wa mawalah. Wa asyhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la syarikalah wa asyhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Ayyuhal musyahidun, urahibukum jami'an wa natasharraf bi ziyarati syekhina Syekh Al-Fadil Dr.Bilal Philip hafizahullah ta'ala wa ra'ah alladhi qad yakunu fi janibina. Assalamualaikum.
السلام ورحمة الله
Ahlan wa
وبركاته.
marhaban
أهلا
fi
بكم.
biladina.
الله يبارك فيكم.
Kaif tayyibun?
الله يحفظكم.
Insyaallah, barakallahu
فرصة
fikum.
طيبة.
Alhamdulillah, insyaallah. طيب وفي هذا اللقاء سنبحث عن التي كيف نجعل أنفسنا خادما للأمة وكيف نجعل أنفسنا خادما للعلم حتى نكون مفتاحا للخير في الأمة. والآن نحن مع الشيخ بلال فيليب الذي سيتكلم عن الحث على أنفسنا في تعليم أنفسنا وفي جذب أنفسنا لتكون نافعا للناس ونكون مفتاحا للخير في الناس. وسنتكلم لا سيما في تربية. عندكم 15 دقائق نتكلم كيف نكون مفتاحا للخير.
يعني أفضل يكون الكلام يعني بيننا، نتكلم قليلا ونتكلم قليلا حتى يكون تبادل الأفكار.
نعم إن شاء الله.
بدل من ألقي كلمة أو محاضرة أو يعني مثل هذا، هكذا أفضل يعني.
نجري الحوار بيننا إن شاء الله.
أفضل
لك أن تتكلم بالعربية وبالإنجليزية. عندنا بعض الأساتذة وبعض الإخوة الذي يتكلم بالإنجليزية.
So, Bismillah wa salatu wa salam wa Rasulillah. We could begin the discussion or sharing of thoughts here with hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in which stated, "Talabul ilmi farida ala kulli." Knowledge is an obligation on every Muslim. So, for us to be able to benefit society, we have to start somewhere. That start has to be based on knowledge. Based on ignorance, then we will not end where we intended to end somewhere else. Get lost on the way. Must have knowledge, clear knowledge. Of course, the ultimate source of knowledge is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. Allah taught Adam the names of foundation from which everything could be named by human beings on that day. We'll be continually finding new things, and we'll give them names, we'll label them, etc., etc. So our starting point has to be with Allah subhanahu. By knowing Allah and knowing the Messenger of Allah, we have the foundation for proper knowledge of the world in which we live and how to utilize this world in a way which is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and at the same time keeping with the way or methodology, the sunnah
Ya.
of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
إذا فهمنا هذا فالعلم هو فضل من الله الذي يؤتيه إلى عباده من يشاء. أليس كذا؟
صحيح، ولكن إذا نظرنا إلى العلم كفضل من الله أو نقول هذا، ولا شك أنه فضل من الله.
نعم.
لكن لما نقول هذا كأننا نقول أن الله سبحانه وتعالى لم يتفضل على الناس الآخرين بدون علم. وقد يكون ليس يعني ليس من أجل تقصيرهم.
نعم.
يعني لأن ظروف الناس مختلف. So when we say that knowledge is a favor, fadl, is a favor from Allah, it's true in the general sense. But we don't want people to think, people who don't have knowledge, that Allah hasn't favored you. You know, you're left out. The favor is only for the ulama. No. Allah has favored everybody. So the knowledge is of many, many different types. Although somebody may not be favored with, knowledge of fiqh, they may be favored with knowledge of medicine. And one can say yes, because fiqh is connected with knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what He wishes for. This has a special place. It does have a special place. That's why we're told to respect those who are knowledgeable, those who are older, who have greater knowledge from having lived longer.
فإذا فهمنا أنه فضل الله فعلينا أن نحاول في تحصيله.
صحيح.
Masya Allah. Baik. Mungkin teman-teman kalau mau menyampaikan sesuatu bisa lah.
So we are encouraged to seek this knowledge. That's why the Prophet ﷺ was an obligation.
Okay.
He didn't just say, seek the knowledge, it's good for you, etc. He said, it's an obligation. Farida. It's like salah. 5 times daily prayer. Seeking knowledge is on that level of obligation.
Enggak, langsung aja kita ngobrol. طيب فإذا فهمنا أن طلب العلم هو الواجب فهل هذا بمعنى كل العلم أو فيه بعض العلم الذي لا يسع المسلم جهله وعليهم أن يتعلموا هذا العلم خاصة؟
الواجب من العلم هو كما قلت لا يسعى للإنسان جهله، لكن هذا ليس يعني في علم الدين فقط، لأن الناس أحيانا people think that it is the religious knowledge which is the obligatory, but it is in general whatever knowledge is necessary to make our lives beneficial lives which are pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then it's all obligatory, as long as we are able. Because of course, even ilmuddin, knowledge of the religion, if one isn't able to access it, then the obligation is moved from.
إذن العلم الواجب لا ينحصر بالعلم الشرعي بل كل علم الذي يخدم الناس. إن شاء الله. بارك الله فيكم. طيب فإذا نتعلم بالعلم الواجب فما علينا بعده؟
العمل بالعلم.
العمل بالعلم.
Because knowledge, if you don't act on it, then it becomes a source of punishment for you. You're held accountable. You had the knowledge, you didn't utilize it, you didn't benefit yourself and people, your family, etc. Then Allah will hold you accountable.
بالنسبة لحديث النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يكون في الناس مفتاحا للخير ومبلغا للشر فماذا عليه حتى يتكون نفسه حتى صار مفتاحا للخير ومغلاقا للشر.
يعني لا ينحصر. لا نستطيع أن نحدد عموما للناس جميعا ما هو مفتاح للخير، لأن الذي قد يكون مفتاح للخير في أهلك وفي ظروفك لا تكون مفتاح عندي، تكون غير. So to try to limit what brings about good to a particular set of knowledge-based information, we don't want to exclude people in different circumstances, because what may be good for you may not be the most important. It will be good for everybody. In general, if it's good for you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's good for everybody. But it may not be the most important good. So we're talking about issues of prioritization. Because what you may need to do first may be different from what I need to do. Because my situation is different, has different demands. So what's most important for me is what helps me complete what my responsibilities are. And there's overlapping. But why I'm saying this is that we want to avoid, making narrow what Allah made wide, vast. Try to keep, Allah has opened that door. The good, the Jannah that Adam was in. The door was open to him completely. You only had to avoid the one tree. But we have that problem. That what is unknown, creates a desire to want to know it. And so we will step over the bounds as a result of it.
فإذا نتعلم العلم وبدأنا بما يحتاج أنفسنا ثم أهلنا ثم المجتمع حولنا هكذا.
ايوه صحيح. يعني لابد أن تبدأ بنفسك.
نعم.
We have to begin with ourselves first and foremost, and then those around us, because كلكم راع وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته. So we have that responsibility to the families, and then to the community. So naturally, we give priority to where we should begin, but we shouldn't begin in such a way that we don't get past the beginning. Some people become very, keyed in and locked in the beginning stage, and they never seem to get past the beginning. So we don't have to learn everything about what's in the beginning before we can move on. We start at a point, but we add to it. We don't just restrict ourselves just to that. يعني لابد أن ننظر إلى ما بعد الأوليات. ننظر إلى الأوليات، يعني لابد أن نبدأ بها، لكن لا نركز كل جهودنا في الأوليات، فيمر سنوات ولسنا، يعني ما زلنا في الأوليات. هذه المشكلة يعني.
طيب، وهل هذا من معنى مفتاح الخير للناس الذي يتعلم ويتركز في ما يحتاج لنفسه ولأهله ولم يبالي في أحوال الناس؟
لابد أن يبالي، لا يستطيع يعني يركز كل الخير في نفسه وأهله، لأن الأهل يعيش في مجتمع
نعم.
يستفيد من المجتمع، والمجتمع يستفيد منهم. ها هو الطريقة السليمة الصحيحة. So the family should always it comes first, yourself first, then your family, but you can't leave your responsibility to the society. That's why the Prophet ﷺ had said, Yadullah al-Jama'ah. Allah's hand, His support is on the community as a whole. That's sometimes the community's need becomes more important even than the individual's need.
طيب، فإذا أراد الرجل بعد أن يفهم أن العلم الواجب هو العلم الذي يحتاج نفسه ويحتاج أهله ويحتاج الناس، فهل عليه أن يتعلم العلم مقررا في مدرسة ما أو في جامعة خاصة، ويبدأ من بداية العلم حتى يكون خريج في الجامعة؟
إذا أمكن فهو خير، ولكن ليس للكل. من الصحابة من هو لم يتجاوز يعني فلاح يعني مع أنه يعني كان يصلي الصلوات الخمسة يعني الأساسيات، الأمور الأساسية، لكن يعني ظروف التي وضع الله سبحانه وتعالى الناس فيها يعني تختلف.
ظروف تختلف إن شاء الله. عندكم شيء؟
كراهية، لا غلط، هذا غلط يعني to avoid getting knowledge because you know that knowledge is going to make you responsible. This is actually from shaitan. Idea ahead from shaitan, right? Because and I've come across people like that too, you know, where circumstance arises and you try to advise them in the good. No, don't tell me. I prefer not to hear it. You know, as long as I haven't heard it, I'm not held responsible for it. But of course, Allah, you can't play games with Allah.
إن شاء الله. أنك تعيش مع البلاد الكفرية وإن
عشت أعيش في قطر.
لا في أمريكا؟
لا. أنا ولدت في أمريكا يعني. ونشأت يعني أتحدث جامعة في الغرب، وجزء من الحياة كان حتى في سابا.
ما شاء الله.
أنا كنت في سابا 4 سنوات. ماليزيا. نعم.
4 سنوات؟
لا. It's actually صباح. Yeah, it's really صباح. يعني
7 سنوات. ماليزيا.
نعم.
مدة 4 سنوات.
4 سنوات.
ولا تتكلم بالملايو؟
لا، ما تعرف.
طيب.
نعم. وهناك كذلك يعني أمي تبنت ولد إندونيسي.
ما شاء الله ما شاء الله.
فكان يعيش معنا في العائلة يعني كأخ. وكنا نراه يصلي يعني لأنه كان يصلي يعني الصلوات الخمسة كان يلتزم. فكنا نراه ونستغرب ايش بيني وبين اخي واختي.
نعم.
كنا نتساءل هذا
قبل دخولك في الإسلام.
نعم سنوات نعم. لما عشت في صباح في ولاية صباح يعني 4 سنوات قضيت معه. وأرى أمي في رمضان تستيقظ مبكرا وتعد السحور له. وإذا أكلنا خنزير هي كانت تعد له سمكة. نعم. كنا نراه ونرى هذه الأعمال وما كنا نفهم لماذا. فما عرفت أنه مسلم إلا بعد سنوات يعني ممكن بعد هذا بتقريبا 6 سنوات وأنا في كندا وأسلمت. يعني آنذاك عرفت أنه مسلم وكان مسلم يعيش معنا في العائلة ولكن لم يدعونا لم يشرح لنا ولا شيء يعني. وكان يعني خجلان يعني. هذا كان في الستينات. نعم
الله
قبل ولادتكم.
فمثل هذا ويعرف أن الإسلام هو حق ويعرف ما واجباته إلى الله. يعبد بنفسه ولا يعلم الناس حتى معك يسكن معك ويعيش معك ولا يشرح
ولمت لما أسلمت وعرفت يعني قابلته وكان فرحان في لما يعني عرف أني أسلمت. ولكن هو كان فرحان جدا. أنا كنت ألومه ليش أنت كم سنة يعني عشت معنا طول هذه الوقت ويعني لم تخبرنا لم تشرح لنا. You know, you didn't explain to me, to us, to the rest of the family, why you didn't. So he said, you know, I felt, you know, your mother is taking care of me, brought me into the family and everything. So if I go and say something to you, maybe it will, you know, create problems in the family. You know, I said, that's not a good experience. For you, it might have seemed that way, but it was not a good experience. Because your duty, share Islam with whoever you. That's your duty.
وقبل دخولك في الإسلام وعند تسكن في كندا تعرف ما عادة ما هو الأساس الذي يمنعهم في دخول الإسلام يشرح صدره للإسلام.
في العموم هو الجهل. هذا في العموم لأن الناس لا يعرفون ما هو الإسلام. يعني ما يرون ما هو الإسلام إلا من نظارة اليهود. يهود مسيطرين على وسائل الإعلام وهم يعني ركزوا في تشويه صورة الإسلام فيها. The Jews are very much active in the media, whether it's Hollywood or Bollywood or whatever. They're very much active and they utilize the media to present a distorted picture of what Islam is. So the average non-Muslim thinks of Islam as being crazy. This guy riding off the desert with a big sword in his hand, one hand, coming to get you, you know. This is لهذا السبب أساسي. لأن أكيد لو فتح الأبواب للناس للتعرف بما هو الإسلام حقيقة، دخلوا أفواجا كما دخلوا قديما.
المشركين. ما شاء الله. طيب، فما هو السبب لدخولك في الإسلام؟
سبب دخولي في الإسلام, my reason for accepting Islam was having thought what I thought was the best way of life, human beings. In communism, 𝘱𝗳𝘀𝘶.
شيوعية.
This is what after doing my own research, this is what I was exposed to. I was in university, Canada, and I became a communist, thinking that it was the best way, to make society responsible for each other and people to live peacefully, etc., etc. This is what I thought from what I was told. And after finding out and realizing, studying history, that communism wasn't the answer. Communism was not able to compete with capitalism. If it were the answer, then it would. This is how one would think. And also, of course, non-Muslims may look at Islam in the same way. That look, Muslims are all backward and so on and so on. But they can't be of any. But it's just their ignorance of the good that's there. Whereas in communism, I saw what was good, but I also saw what was evil. Communism. وبعض الإخوة شرحوا لي نقاط غموض، فيها غموض، حتى أعرف حقيقة الشيوعية. وبعد دراسة الديانة الأخرى، المذاهب الأخرى، سياحية، يعني وصلت إلى حد قرأت كتاب محمد قطب.
أي كتاب؟
دكتور محمد
قطب.
نعم. كتابه شبهات حول الإسلام. English, it was translated as Islam the Misunderstood. فهو عمل مقارنة بين الإسلام والشيوعية والهندوسية، ويعني كل الأديان والأفكار السياسية. فبعد أن قرأت هذا الكتاب يعني وصلت إلى حد أن كل الشر التي في المذاهب المختلفة ليست موجود.
كل الشر مذاهب مختلفة لا يوجد في الإسلام.
لا توجد. وكل الخير التي في كل هذه المذاهب كلها موجود في الإسلام.
ما شاء الله.
يعني أسلمت
الحمد لله. كما عرفنا أن أهل الغرب كفار الذين لا يأبؤون بالدين، إذا دخلوا في الإسلام دخلوا مجردا، أعني أنهم ليس عندهم الحث في زيادة العلم و ماذا؟ ليس عندهم الإرادة في تعلم الإسلام. مع أنك بعد دخولك في الإسلام وعندك الحث في زيادة العلم تعلم حتى تكون شيخا وأستاذا.
يعني بعد إسلامي يعني بدأت أبحث علم، أني كنت أريد أن أعرف الإسلام يعني من أسسها، من ألف. لكن في ذاك الوقت الجماعة اللي حولي، اللي كانوا حولي في ذاك الوقت، كان جهال. لا أحد منهم عنده يعني علم شرعي جيد، ناس عاديين. People who I met around me after I accepted Islam were common people, didn't have any real background. They were just practicing what we call cultural Islam. What they learned in their families, their parents did, what their relatives did, what society did. That's what they knew of Islam. So naturally, when I met people from India, Pakistan, Egypt, Morocco, Nigeria, from different places, I kept getting different explanations. And I realized that this can't be. So at that point, I decided I needed to leave Canada, go overseas. It was just one example that really brought it home for me, that what I had gained from those around me, you know, or as they told it, in Islam, you had to follow a madhab. 4 madhabs had to follow. And when I asked them, well, okay, which one? They said, well, you can choose. But Abu Hanifa was. And the majority of Muslims are Hanafis.
وهذا عند تعلمك في جامعة؟ هذا عند تعلمك في جامعة؟
لا هذا من الناس يعني في كندا قبل أن قررت الذهاب والخروج من كندا. فهذا كان الكلام يعني بين الناس عاديين، يعني جماعة التبليغ يعني هذا يعني استفدنا منهم من حيث قراءة القرآن، لكن من هذه الناحية ما استفدنا. فأنا قلت خلاص أنا حنفي. I'll be a Hanafi, you know, since they're the most, and first Imam was Abu Hanifa. He was the first of the 4.
You chose first Imam.
So, but then when I started to study with those, there were a few came over, became Imams of masjid, but they weren't really ulama. They had ilm, they had some knowledge. And I first looked at Hanafi fiqh, I tried to go. Then I looked at Shafi'i fiqh. I noticed that in Hanafi fiqh, if you accidentally touch a woman, your wudu gone. No, sorry, not gone. It doesn't. Not gone. doesn't affect it. Accidentally touch a woman, or even deliberately, it doesn't break your wudu. But in Shafi'i fiqh, accidentally touch a woman, your wudu is gone. So now, if both madhabs are correct, because that's what they said, you had to choose one out of the four.
Okay.
And it didn't matter which one you choose. Yeah, whichever one you chose, it's okay because they're all correct.
Yeah, all correct.
They're all correct. يعني كل الأربعة يعني كل واحد منهم صحيح بنفسه. So if that was the case, then this raised a big question in my mind. That it means that you could have wudu and not have wudu at the same time. Right? According to Hanafi, you had wudu. Shafi'i, you don't have wudu. So what's the reality? And is it possible to have wudu and not have wudu at the same time? غير معقول. أنا قلت يعني لو قبلت هذا يعني أكون مثل النصارى الذين قبلوا أن واحد زائد واحد زائد واحد يساوي واحد. It's completely illogical. فقررت في ذاك الوقت أنني لابد من السفر إلى منبت الإسلام.
ما شاء الله.
مدينة نحاول بقدر الاستطاعة حتى نحصل.
So this is the best motivation for you.
That was for me, yes.
بارك الله. ثم بعد أن تكون شيخا وداعيا وصرت في أنحاء العالم يبث الإسلام إلى الناس، وأنت تشرف في بناء الجامعة، فماذا الحث الأساسي الأساسية في هذا؟
يعني الحث الأساسي هو بلغوا عني ولو آية. Prophet ﷺ said, convey whatever you learn from me, even if it's only one verse from me. وخيركم من تعلم القرآن علمه. Best of you are those who learn the Quran and teach it to others. So that became, those two principles became guiding principles, my studies and my life after, conveying the da'wah, conveying the learning, the message.
ولماذا تتكون جامعة؟ فعندنا مثل الذاكر نايك ليس عنده جامعة، مجتمع عنده جامعة ليس عنده. أنت الوحيد الذي
لا ما نقول أنا الوحيد، يكون ناس آخرين ممكن الذي أنت تعرفه، أما غيري غيرك يعني من هو جامعات.
الداعية من الخارج، من بلاد الغرب، الذي يتكلم بالإنجليزية
يعني حمزة يوسف. نعم.
من أين؟
أمريكا.
عنده جامعة؟
عنده جامعة.
الله.
يعني جامعة صوفية ولكن جامعة.
بارك الله فيك. عندكم أشياء. تفضل. لو سمحت. هذا الشيخ ويرا مندري بخرون، أحد المدرسين في هذه القناة. I met one of them.
Well, first let me say it is not just me. There was a group of people who were engaged. I was one among the group. Alhamdulillah, the effort was by Allah's qadr. Actually, the brother who began the effort to make da'wah, Saudi brother, was a sergeant in the Saudi army. He began without knowing hardly any English. Hardly knowing any. And, people were considering and accepting Islam just based on his akhlaq. But he wanted to do much more because, it was very slow. The way of akhlaq is very slow. People get to know you and to understand. He wanted to reach out to others. So, he asked around to find out, who can I get to help me with this? And they eventually told him, go to this one, go to that one, go to that. And then they said, go to Bilal Phillips, Riyadh. So I came back with him and began da'wah. The war broke out. Stopped then. But the war was very short, 1 week, something. Then it was now time for them to go back to America. So they had been given location by the Saudi government, occupy as an encampment for themselves as they were being processed back out of it. And some officers from the Saudi military, Air Force, they spoke with the heads of the American military and asked them, permission to set up some tents and explain to the people about the culture and way of Saudi Arabia, what it's, like tourist approach. So they said, fine, go ahead. So they, got myself and others who were in Saudi Arabia. Some were still students in Medina University. Some were people I met on Hajj, which came then. Some were in Riyadh, and we got a group together, and we set up there a big tent, which was called the Saudi Arabian Cultural Information. Saudi Arabian Cultural Information Tent. Not da'wah tent. Cultural information. And we had a big table inside the tent with cultural information about the desert, about the different civilizations of Saudi Arabia, animals, plants, and all this kind of thing. But in the middle of them, there would be some brochures. What is Islam? Who was Muhammad? So and so and so. So this was a cover, and we didn't want to do open da'wah because they would have shut it down. So it was left that way. What would happen, they would bring in maybe about 100, 150 from the troops at a time come in. They would sit in some stands that were there. I would sit in front of them, distance away, like from here to where you are. And I would begin by explaining to them about something of Saudi history, culture, and so on. And of course, I would mention Islam, because Islam is everywhere in Saudi culture. And what would happen is that sometimes in the course of explaining, some of them would want to argue about Christianity, right? They had already had an idea of what Saudi Arabia was. And in their mind, it was backward. Islam, they were very harsh. So when they asked me, I would try to give them explanation. But some of them would want to argue about Christianity. Now, the majority that came were not interested. So we had already decided the very beginning, before we started, that we would have somebody else ready for them, have that discussion, but not in the main tent. We had a second tent, so we would, when these issues of Christianity and argumentation came up, I would say, this is not the place for that discussion. We're talking culture. And so you can go down to the end of the tent there. You can go through there. Somebody will sit with me. Yeah, for sure. Because we don't want to turn it into a religious debate and argument, because for the mass of people, they weren't interested. So the one who was waiting for them in the tent was a former Christian missionary who converted, yes. He studied missionary work in Sri Lanka. He was actually Sri Lankan. Big beard. He looked like a holy man, right? Anyway, he had studied about missionary work in different parts of the world and completed his course. When he completed his course, he was supposed to be posted in a country of his choice. So he asked people at the college where he studied, which country are the people most difficult to convert to Christianity? They said, Saudi Arabia. To get a Saudi to convert to Christianity is just like, don't even think about it. So he said, that's where I want to go. And he was, hardcore, ready to take it on, So he went to Saudi Arabia as an accountant to cover. They don't come in and say, we're missionaries coming to convert your people, right? They came in as an accountant. And after he got there, he said, okay, the first thing I need to do is I need to get a Quran, study it carefully. Because he had studied verses from the Quran, etc., in his missionary work. But they were selected verses. He didn't realize that they were deliberately selected, but they were selected verses to twist his mind and make him think Islam is illogical or, or harsh or it's this or it's that, whatever. So he got the Quran translation. Had to look around for a while. He got one, English translation. He began to read it. Kept on it. And he went back through it second time. By the time he had finished the second time, he was ready. He was looking, where can I give my shahada? You know, they sent him to Qasim, to one of the shuyukh there at a dawah center there. They trained him there. Then, after they gave him enough training, about 6 months, they let him go. They're working for us now. So, alhamdulillah, he used to be, you could say a dynamo dawah. He used to come, he traveled around Saudi Arabia, and he used to come into Riyadh. When he came into Riyadh, he used to come to visit me. Airport is about half an hour's drive from my house. So, inevitably, whenever he came to Riyadh, back to Riyadh, he would drive to my house and he would bring the taxi driver in with him to take shahada.
Inshallah.
Inevitably. Every time. I mean, mostly they were Filipinos. Mostly Filipinos. Yeah. Half an hour, he had them.
Mashallah.
So, mashallah, he was as I said, a da'wah dynamo. And then fully experienced in the Christian way of thinking and all of this. So he would be waiting for them in the tent at the end, when I would say, okay, you can carry out that, religious debate or discussion, you can do it in the tent. He was waiting for them. Yeah, still alive. He's back he went back to Sri Lanka. But what his main strategy was, favorite strategy, was when the people would come in, say, yeah, we want to talk about Jesus being God and Trinity, and we want to get into it. So he'd first ask them, which Bible do you want to discuss it in? Which Bible? Just one Bible. He would have a suitcase with him. Open it up, there would be about 17 or 18 different copies of the Bible. What? Never knew about this. Yeah? All English, yeah. It's not other languages. All English, the different versions of the Bible. Got so many that have been written. So he would break that open.
How much difference? How much difference? 70.
No, 17. Some places are 17 or 18, something like this. So they would be there. Pick it up and heard about that one. But people are believing, because 7 Days Adventists, Jehovah's Witness, all of these guys have made up their own translations of the Bible. So there's a bunch of them. So that's what he would do. That was really the shock. Shock them. What? After that, it was easy. But alhamdulillah, in the course of 5 months of the work that we were doing in the main tent, along with what brother was doing there, 3,000. And I was tasked with following up them. Air Force headquarters after the over there, mostly out, went back there. Air Force headquarters, religious affairs department. Because when they were leaving, we would give them numbers of nearest masjid, unity. So I would call up, check back to all the community.
عمل كبير ولكن غير مشهور. هو غير مشهور.
غير مشهور. مشهور لمن يبحث.
What's your name? What's your name?
Dawah in Desert Storm. Oh, who are you talking about? The Dai. Is that what you're asking about? اسم الداعية السريلانكي؟
Yes.
اسمه
له عمل كبير، جهود كبير غير مشهور.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly. I can get it if you want it.
Okay, inshallah. تقبل الله
You're gonna
عملك.
invite him here to do some da'wah for
Allah, barakallahu fikum. Ada yang lain, Ustaz? Tafadhal. Fitness.
Well, let me say that after I accepted Islam, I gave da'wah to my parents. For 21 years. 21 years. Then they accepted it. Okay? So what does that tell you? What is the first quality that you have to have? Patience.
Patience.
Because إنما عليك البلاغ إنما علينا البلاغ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that it was his responsible علينا الحساب. عليك البلاغ وعلينا الحساب. This is our job, is just to convey the message, to take people to account after. This is God's job. So you have to be prepared to just try your parents, your family, a variety of different ways. That's it. Be willing to try different ways. Don't keep trying to do the same one, one way. It's like bouncing your head against the wall, expecting the wall to break sometime. No, your head's gonna break, right? So you have to be ready to try different methodologies. So I tried all kinds of things with my parents. I written a book on true religion of God. First sort of Dawah book, which was used in Riyadh community, foreign community centers. And after about 2 years, I'd wanted to revise it. So I gave it to my parents. Father was a professor. Mother is a math teacher. But so I asked them to just look it over for me. If you find, anything which is not quite logical or needs correcting, it's incorrect or whatever, let me know. I want to improve. So they went through it, identified certain things, went and changed these things. They went over it again. So then I asked them after that, why don't you become Muslims? That was my try through that channel. They said, okay, give us the Quran. So they took a copy of the Quran. They started to read that. And actually, when I got my PhD and I had to leave Saudi Arabia, 93, a couple of years after the Gulf, went to Canada. My parents, when I first day, my mom came to me privately, told me, don't tell your father. Let him make his own. The next day, my father came. Alhamdulillah. But the point is, from this, that I asked my mom, because my father explained to me that actually he was a muwahid from the time he was an early teenager. In school, he had studied about logic, taught in British schools that logic. So he had studied about logic, and he concluded that Jesus couldn't have been God. Not possible. Doesn't make sense. Contradictory. So he stopped praying to Jesus, only prayed to God. Now his brothers and sisters, they used to call him the atheist. Because if you didn't believe Jesus was God, then you didn't believe in God. But in reality, he was a muwahid. And he remained on that, all the way until that time now when he came. But for my mother, when I asked her why, she said that when I'd come to visit her in Jeddah, moved down from Riyadh to Jeddah, and I came from Riyadh, so I went to see her, and she told me, can you see anything? I said, when I'm looking around, I see something moving. So what she had done, she had knitted crosses, salib, cross, knitted it. And she hung it over the door coming into the house, door going to her bedroom, door going to the living room. But she said, she asked me about it because even though she had put these crosses, it was still there. So I said, well, maybe in Islam, the Prophet ﷺ had said that we read Surah Al-Baqarah, drive shaitan out of the house. So I said, let me read Surah Al-Baqarah. So I sat in the living room, read Surah Al-Baqarah. Then I went back to Riyadh and I forgot about it. So she told me then, when you read Surah Al-Baqarah, So for me, that was clear evidence that Christianity was not the answer. It wasn't right. Because were it right, it would have finished it. But you're reading the Quran.
ما شاء الله، شكرا جزاك الله خيرا. ولكن مع الأسف الوقت المحدد، نحن في المغرب والآن قد جاء المغرب. الآن قد جاء المغرب. خلي جماعة إن شاء الله. Baik, jazakumullah khairan, kita sampaikan kepada Fadilatul Syekh Dr.Bilal hafizahullah ta'ala wa ra'ah. Dan mohon maaf, barangkali dalam perbincangan kita kali ini tidak ada terjemahan secara langsung. Insya Allah kita akan usahakan agar video rekaman ini nanti bisa kita berikan subtitle dalam. Semoga bermanfaat. Barakallahu fikum. Assalamualaikum.
But the message from the second one, or what made others accept Islam, that try everything. Don't assume that you try one way and that is going to make it happen. You have to be patient. It's again patience, goes back to patience. But also wisdom to try a variety of different. Because you never know what is going to be sufficient for this person.
Alhamdulillah. سنرافقك بعد المغرب. عندنا بعض الجماعة كثير في المسجد وهم ينتظرون. فعليك أن قريب
بس ما دخل المغرب
الآن دخل المغرب. هذا
I don't know.
Oh ما شاء الله.